Professor Jones,
So the question is,
how did we
why
get
is
it?
confidence so low despite the fact that we have these incredibly secure elections? Um, so, so I think that the former president, particularly since 2016, has done quite a bit to, number one, begin to stoke our historical racial tension. And not only do we have political polarization, but we also have a history of racial polarization that I think the former president uses very effectively to sort of pit people against each other. And in looking at the Voting Rights Act, which was enacted in 1965, this upended a Jim Crow system that allowed white supremacy to reign in our nation. And so there is a conservative backlash to that development that has been sort of cooking and simmering and developing since the 1960s, and that we're seeing come to the fore today, right? We've had significant changes, for example, in the Supreme Court in that regard. In some of the recent presidential campaigns, we've seen, not campaigns, but presidencies, we've seen a shift from sort of career governmental employees, like during the George W. Bush presidency, to political appointees. So we've had this sort of arc of pushback conservatism that has occurred as a result of the changes of the racial equity in our country. We've also had a polarization racially of the parties. So, I mean, I think we've sort of had that consistently over American history, but we definitely have it now. We also have demographic change happening that's going to result in us being a minority majority party. I haven't looked this up recently, but when I was looking at it maybe 5 or 10 years ago, it sounded like 2031. So we've got this two-party system that is winner take all, that I really think once we get past this 2024 election, more people need to be thinking about how limited a two-party winner-take-all system is, and that is combined with our history of race tension and problems and development over time in the United States. So when you get to the candidacy of the former president, who is now a candidate for president, I think he does a very good idea at stoking the idea that we have high rates of voter fraud. And in that instance, I think he's concerned about winning the presidency at all. I mean, I think it was sort of a surprise to him. But one way to do that is to undermine elections by sort of picking up this complaint that people of color have had, that they haven't had equal access, or that the election systems have not been treating them fairly in states like Georgia. And then sort of running with that topic as if it is aimed against a Trump presidency, a potential Trump presidency. So raising the specter of voter fraud, which we know is not factual. And yet we see so much media support and belief around these ideas that the election isn't gonna be fair. And that's really important combined with creating that racial tension that I think naturally or viscerally in the United States puts people at odds, and it makes it more difficult for them to see how much similarities average Americans have. So it creates a false environment in terms of this winner take all, and if you get something, I can't have something system. It also, the former president has really stoked this idea that the media is problematic while feeding it false news. And so that begins to grow an environment where people don't necessarily believe the truth, and instead they have these ideas that voter fraud is high, and that if their person doesn't win, that there has been voter fraud. So I mean, really pleased about the fact that the state of Georgia, for example, that we had the most secure election in 2020. I didn't know until the former panel about this new check-in system. I did know, of course, that we're going to be able to see ballots online, and all of these things contribute to ensuring that regardless of what people would like to believe, we do in fact have secure, working electoral systems. So one of the things that I've been saying to people is that you really need to get out and cast your vote, even if you don't think voting is the most important political activity that you will participate in. I want to argue to you that it is on the spectrum of things that you should be doing. I understand from students in the AUC that you might not resonate with this idea that your foremothers and fathers fought and died for this right to vote. It doesn't resonate in the same way, but I want to encourage you to understand that these new laws that are making it more difficult for people to access the polls, arguably, these media campaigns to make you believe that there isn't a secure election, all of this is because particularly you as youth voters, some of you as Black voters, are extremely important to the political outcomes that are going to happen in 2024, and you were extremely important to what happened in 2020. So whether you can resonate with some of this history that I'm attempting to convey to you or not, I need you to understand that all of that energy and effort is being put out there around this, because having you stay home is gonna mean that you aren't able to convey your opinion through this particular outlet, right? I want you working the polls. I want you working on other political issues in your communities. But I think that for this 2024 election, especially under the specter of Project 2025, depending on your view of that, I'm gonna need you to get out and vote, hopefully early, so that you understand that November 5th is the last day. And I'm hoping that you will take what I'm saying so that you have a sense of why confidence might be low, but we have a secure election system here in Georgia that is just waiting for you to show up over the next couple of weeks.